I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of how to implement a content distribution network for your WordPress-powered website. First, you might want to know what a content distribution network is, and you can see an image here of how a website is traditionally served from a single server out to all of your users out there on the internet. If you use a content distribution network, the network automatically places static content such as images, CSS files, and JavaScript files on servers around the globe so that your users can fetch information from the server that happens to be closest to them, and that reduces the amount of time necessary to load your web pages. Why is that important for SEO purposes? Well, basically, if a web page takes too long to load, many users become impatient and they leave, and that increases the bounce rate. And when Google sees that you have a high bounce rate, they're less likely to place you very high in search results. So for SEO purposes, it's in your interest to implement a content distribution network to make sure that your users get the best user experience possible. So we're going to implement this CDN on a blog that is powered by WordPress. So here we have a blog called whatstevethinks.com. Like I said, it is a WordPress powered blog. The entire page is, the entire site is powered by WordPress, and that makes it much easier to implement a content distribution network. What we're going to do is first look at some metrics before, and we can run a test using webpagetest.org. So we can type in www.whatstevethinks.com, hit Start Test, and about a minute or two later it will produce some results. And it tells us that the first view takes about 7.3 seconds to load the page, and the page starts rendering in a little over 3 seconds. And then there are some elements that don't fully load until about 11 seconds later. When someone comes back to the page, some elements are cached in the browser, and so the repeat visitor, the page loads much faster in 2.8 seconds, and it starts rendering in 1.9 seconds. So that's pretty good, but we'd like to do better. The test tells us that the first byte time gets a grade of F, Keep Alive Enabled is an A, Compressed Text is an F, Compressed Images is a B, Caching Static Contents is an F, and there's no CDN detected. So the page speed score is 70 out of 100, and we see 3 Fs here, and we obviously like to change that. Now keep in mind that this particular test at webpagetest.org can give you very different results from one trial to another. So when you run the test, run it 2 or 3 times and try to use the median or the fastest one. So when you make comparisons before and after, you're taking out of the equation things in the network and things that might cause latency that might not always affect all of your users. So that's the first step, is to run a test. Now the content distribution network we're going to work with today is called MaxCDN. MaxCDN is one of many CDNs available. I like them because they're very inexpensive. You basically get for $39.95 1 terabyte of data transfer. There's no monthly fee, and the 1 terabyte is usable anytime within a 12-month period. A terabyte is a tremendous amount of data, so if you divide a terabyte by 365 days, that gives you, I believe, about 2,700 megabytes per day of bandwidth. That's more than enough for any blog out there. Furthermore, the $39.95, if you scroll down towards the bottom of the page, you'll see a link down here for the MaxCDN coupon. And here's a coupon code, MaxCDN coupon, gives you 25% off. So you can basically get the CDN service for about $30 a year. So it's a great deal. So let's dive right into this. The first step is to sign up for an account with MaxCDN, and you just go through the pricing and sign up process. I have a screen over here where we're, sorry, before I go into that, let me talk about the MaxCDN network. They talk about what an edge location is, what a peer location is, and so forth. MaxCDN has, I believe, 13 or so edge locations. Each one of these blue pinpoints here is an edge location where they own a server. So if you have a visitor to your blog from Seattle, they would get their content served from the Seattle server. These green pinpoints are peer networks or peer points where they've partnered with other CDNs, and visitors near those locations get served from the peers, which is just one additional hop away from a MaxCDN Edge server. And you can see that the network also is implemented in Europe and Asia, although not as extensively as in North America. So that's the MaxCDN network. So now we're going to dive into how to set up MaxCDN. Once you have logged in, you can see that we're logged in as steve@seosteve.com. You'll go into the Manage Zones tab, and what you want to do is create a pull zone. A pull zone is a location on the network where you're getting all of your static content served from. And so the first step is create a pull zone, and you want to create a name, at least 3 characters. So let's call this static for static files. You can name it whatever you like, as long as it's at least 3 characters, no special characters and no spaces, things like that. Now the origin server URL, so you need to specify the current web server address where your files are being served from. So let's put in the full URL, including the HTTP. The custom CDN domain, you can leave that blank. The label you can leave blank. And then the compression text box allows you to enable compression if your web server enables that. So your web server may or may not allow that. You can experiment with it. I believe you can check it now, and if it breaks your website, you can go back and turn it back off later. So now we're going to hit create, and after a few moments, MaxCDN provisions some servers and creates a pull zone. So now we can go into Manage Pull Zone, and we see that there's a zone ID, there's a temporary URL, a zone name, and some additional information. And so we're going to need this temporary URL later. We'll come back to this page shortly. We also want to go into our Manage Account page, and we'll just open that in a new tab. And inside of Manage Account, we want to go into the API, and we need to create a new API key. So we can hit Add Key, and it gives you an API key. There is a description you can put in, static again, and hit Save. So now you've created an API key. Okay, so that is step 2 within MaxCDN. Now you want to log into your WordPress administration page. And so here we are inside of your WordPress administration page, and we go into plugins, and we go into search for a new plugin that you're going to install. And you want to install a plugin called W3 Total Cache. Let's search for that. And here we go, W3 Total Cache. So you want to go ahead and install that. Takes just a moment. Now you want to activate the plugin. And you will see that you now have a new tab to the left called Performance. So let's go into General Settings. General Settings. Now there are lots and lots of settings within W3 Total Cache, General, Page Cache, and so forth. And there are a few essential steps, and then there are a number of things that you may want to experiment with. I don't know the details of how W3 Total Cache works well enough to be able to explain all of the options, but let me go through the ones that I do know about. The first one is Page Cache. You want to make sure that that one is enabled. Further down, Minify, I would leave that unenabled for now. The database cache, I would not enable that. Object cache can be enabled. Browser cache enabled. So far, by default, all of these are enabled. Then down here under CDN, you would click on Enable, and if you install this for the first time, this won't be enabled. Since I had a previous installation, it's reverting back to my original settings, so you can see how this is already pre-populated for me. But from this drop-down list, I've selected MaxCDN or NetDNA/MaxCDN, and then the rest of these settings you can leave at their defaults. All right, once you've made those setting changes, you can click on Save All Settings. The next step is to go to the CDN tab over here. And within that, you want to click on Host Attachments, Host WP Includes and Files, Host Theme Files, Host Custom Files. Again, most of these defaults should work. Below that, you have your configuration and your section where you replace the site's host name with. And here we have the temporary URL that was provided when you provisioned your pull zone. So you're going to copy that and go into the WordPress admin and paste that into the field where it says replace site's host name with. So now we have static.stevewiedemann.SEO.netDNA-cdn.com as your temporary URL. So basically, when somebody requests your website, static items such as images and CSS files are going to come from this URL rather than from your original website's URL, which is whatstevethinks.com. Now here you have the API key. Let's go back into the Manage API Keys. So we're going to copy the API key and plug that into the API key field here, or so the API ID field. Next, we're going to copy the API key itself and plug that into the API key. I believe the rest of these settings you can leave as is. So now you hit Save All Settings. And next, you're going to want to go into the Browser Cache tab up here. For most of these sections, you want the Set Expires checked off, Set Cache Control Header unchecked, Set Entity Tag checked, Set W3 Total Cache checked, and Enable HTTP gzip compression checked, and then the next two unchecked. The following sections, so that was the general section up at the top. And if you scroll down, there's a section for CSS and JavaScript. You want the same things checked off. There is a drop down here where you have several choices, and you want that to be cache public. Scroll down further, there is a section for HTML and XML. You want the same options checked off, and you want the cache control policy to be public. And scroll down further, media and other files, again you want the same things checked off and the same cache control policy to be public. These are things that you may have to change if you're installing the W3 Total Cache plugin for the first time. And now you want to hit Save All Settings. Okay, now the cache is basically the files that are being hosted on the servers around the edge of the network. And by now, if you followed all of these steps for your website, you should be set up and everything should be working properly. Let's first make sure that we've emptied the page cache. What that does is it empties all of the edge network servers of their copies of the files. So you're starting from scratch right now. Next, let's go to your website, and you want to empty your browser cache. So in Chrome, or I believe in most browsers, if you hit Control, Shift, and Delete, you're able to clear your browsing data. So let's clear your cache in your local browser, and we can close that. So now, if we go back to our website and we refresh the page, okay, we see that the web page has been served up. It looks exactly as it did before.